Alright guys, thank you for checking us out. If you like what you see, make sure that you are strangling the like button, the subscribe button, the follow button, whatever it is. Also be sure to check out the links in the description. I'm also going to have some annotated links or annotated spots for this video. So we're going to be working on the scissor sweep today. So today we're going to be doing a little deep dive into the scissor sweep. I want to be talking about some of the common problems, or the basic setup first, and then some common problems that a lot of people have with the scissor sweep. I'm going to teach you how to fix those problems, and then later I'm going to talk to you a little bit about transitions in and out of the scissor sweep, as well as an optimal setup, or the way that I actually do the scissor sweep. So real quick backstory, the scissor sweep, I've always been terrible in it. It wasn't until I was a brown belt where I actually started to figure out how to apply the scissor sweep correctly. Okay? I was making a lot of mistakes with the setup. I also didn't really understand the leverage or the body mechanics behind the scissor sweep. And I think that the biggest problem with the scissor sweep in the first place is that it's one of the first sweeps that you learn when you first start training. So everybody and their mother knows how to do the scissor sweep, therefore everybody really knows how to defend it. So once you start getting better at it, however, you start to come back to that area where it starts to get a lot easier to apply, but you gotta understand the position a little bit more. Okay, so again, it took me till I was a brown belt. Now, just with the basic setup, we're gonna start off with closed guard. And just a basic setup here, I'm gonna be making cross collar grip and sleeve, okay? So some people will reach towards the end of the sleeve for a little pocket grip or four-finger grip here. I like just going right towards my partner's elbow. So if my partner's elbow is right here, I'm gonna grab right about here. This is kind of where I like grabbing. This is perfectly fine too. The main thing is that when I sweep, I want to keep him from getting his hand on the mat. So I got collar, cross collar grip, and sleeve. So very traditionally, put my foot on the ground, I start to hip escape out. My knee's gonna come right into his sternum here, and now I'm scissoring my bottom leg back and my top leg forward, okay? In order to get extra torque on this sweep, I like to hop up on my elbow right here as I turn to look over my shoulder, okay? So I go collar, sleeve, my knees on his sternum, hand on the elbow here. Now, as I sweep, I hop up on my elbow, looking over my shoulder, and now I slide my hips, all right? Now I get to the top mount position with that cross collar grip, okay? So, from this position again, I've got cross collar grip and my sleeve grip. Let's step out to create a little bit of space. Knee goes in the sternum. This leg is gonna come down towards his knee. Again, I'm trying to sweep back. As I sweep my top leg forward, I look over my bottom shoulder here, and now my goal is to get into the mount position by sliding my hips, okay? Quick detail. The reason why I slide my hips is because if he tries to press against my chest, and I try to go chest first, he's gonna be able to recover his guard, okay? So, by sliding my hips, if he does press my chest, I'm still able to get into the mount position, okay? So, when I sweep, my hips, I lead with my hips go forward into that mount position, all right? Now, some of the major problems with this particular sweep are, for one, well, people aren't controlling that sleeve arm. Two, the knee might be collapsed here, so if we kind of go a little bit deeper, if I get my sweep here and I'm not controlling this arm correctly, then what's gonna happen is he's gonna be able to post, put his hand on the ground. Now I'm not gonna be able to sweep. You can actually just back step real quick, technical lift. He's gonna be able to pass my guard fairly easy, okay? So, what I wanna do here is make sure that I'm controlling. So if he has a tendency, or if he's trying to put his wrist on the mat, I need to make sure that I'm keeping this wrist from touching the mat, okay? If he gets his hand on the mat, this is too late. Don't try to hyperextend your partner's elbow, okay? This is too late. I'll go over some transitions in a minute, but don't try to pull from here, okay? So make sure whatever grip you have, you're pulling this wrist back, right? The next thing is this knee shield. If my knee is too low, then he's just gonna put his belly on my knee, and now I'm not gonna be able to use any leverage for this sweep, okay? At this point here, I actually have to start framing, getting my guard up, or getting away from him, and then recovering my knee back into a stable position, okay? Now, what I'm trying to do is, when I hip escape into this scissor sweep, I actually am trying to put my knee right in his sternum, okay? So at this point here, even if he does try to come into me, look, my knee going into his sternum is gonna make it very uncomfortable, all right? Now that brings up an extra point. For me to get this sweep effectively or efficiently, his hips have to be off the mat. So if he does press into me here, it makes my sweep much easier. I'll talk about timing in a little bit, but for right now when it comes to setups, but for right now, that's how I know when to sweep and when not to sweep, okay? So don't get your knee down to the belly. You gotta keep your knee upright where your collar grip is, okay? So as he presses forward, perfect opportunity for me to get my sweep, okay? Now, one of the other problems here is the setup. So typically, again, everybody knows that when you get collar or sleeve, you put your knee in the hip. You're gonna be going for the scissor sweep, okay? So I usually try to set it up with a cross collar choke, okay? So I get my deep collar grip, I start to work my cross collar choke. As he defends by coming up, now I start to get my knee back here, okay? Now when my knee's here, when he defends the choke, his hips are actually up, okay? So if you can imagine here, if Bryson's gonna get me in a scissor sweep, he goes collar and sleeve, if I feel the scissor sweeps coming, then I sit low in my hips. If he's got a collar choke, then I have to get my hands inside here, try to posture up. And when I do that, he can get his scissor sweep here. I'm off balance, okay? So when I set it up, that's kind of how I'm approaching it. Now, real quick, before we go into more setups, I want to talk about the hips, right? So if Bryson sees that I'm going for my scissor sweep, he could always sit low in the hips. And if he sits low in the hips, now I'm not going to have a chance to finish it, okay? One option, which I do sometimes, is to push this knee out. Now when I push that knee out, I can remove his base a little bit and then finish my scissor sweep, okay? So again, I really don't like messing with people here on the scissor sweep when they start to sit low. When they sit low, if you want to continue, you have to be able to kick that leg out and then sweep, okay? Instead, usually what I do is if my partner does sit low, I always like to come back and start attacking that far arm, or that near arm, however you want to look at it. So I'm turning towards him. If he starts to sit low, then I'm simply going to bring this leg on the inside of his armpit and start to set up shoulder attacks here, okay? That's just personally for me. If my partner starts to defend by sitting low in his hips, then I'm going to look for something else. But you can push that knee out in the event that you do want to get your scissor sweep, okay? So now let's talk about a couple of transitions here. Now, if I have collar sleeve, I start to set it up and he back steps, all right? One thing, I messed up here, I didn't get the wrist. One thing that I like to do is once he starts to get that position back, he back steps, my knee automatically comes up to my chest. I just get my guard back, okay? It's very, very important. If you mess up the scissor sweep, your partner back steps out, just go right back to your guard, okay? You do that by lifting this leg up. So, I start to set it up, he back steps, okay? As he gets his leg up, this bottom knee comes right back to my chest. And because of this position here, I actually might have an attack. He's doing a good job holding on my lapel, but if he wasn't, then I can start easily. I have a little more room with my hips to be able to get my leg over for like a triangle, okay? And that's what's happening when he puts his hand on the mat. Anytime he puts his hand on the mat, he's kind of leaving himself open for submissions, okay? So that's one way to kind of take a look at the setup here. Now, another transition here is, I used to do this when I was a blue belt a lot. So if he's gonna scissor sweep me, if he's gonna try to scissor sweep, okay, as he scissor sweeps, I used to like to put my knee right through his hips, put my foot right on his ankle, and then now I have to get him back into this position to attack the ankle lock. Okay. I don't do it much anymore. I'll show you why in a second. But that was one transition when I was a blue belt I used to love doing. Is your opponent would set up the scissor sweep, I'd step out, boom, and I would go right into my ankle lock. Now all I have to do is get him back to this side, finish, and catch that ankle. The reason why I don't like doing it anymore is because, especially at a higher level, you never want to sit back into footlocks unless you're sure you got it, right? So if I go here, Bryson sits into this footlock, then I'm just going to follow him up. And now, especially for competition, I've got my 2 points, okay? So it's a really easy fix to just, as he starts to jump into it, I start to come up and get into a sweep position or sweeping position, okay? So moving on. One of the ways, again, that I like setting this up is with the collar choke. So I reach in, go for a collar choke. When he starts to defend, now I time it, and I get my position here, okay? So from here, as I start to sweep, one thing that might happen is he starts to try to force his chest on the inside of my knee. So at this point, look, I just let him go. I let him go, I reach back for my cross collar choke, and now I can go right back to my cross collar choke. There's one more really important kind of off-balancing detail here. I learned this when I was a blue belt. I went to a seminar, I don't even remember who, and we were talking about setting up the scissor sweep when your partner sits up with the leg, okay? The highlight of that seminar was learning how to use your legs to create angles, and this happens to be the one thing that stuck with me, is understanding where the hips should be in a scissor sweep position, okay? So it'll be kind of hard to explain from this angle, so let me go here. So one of the biggest problems with the scissor sweep is where people have their hips, okay? So if you can imagine my hips are in a straight line. As I get my scissor sweep out, my hips are more or less in line with Bryson's body, okay? So as I go to sweep, telling him to keep his balance a little bit. As I go to sweep, it's easy for him to more or less keep his balance. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, look, my hips are on this plane. I'm gonna move my hips over to this side. So move out. Now my hips are lined up on the left side of his body. And now, if I tell him to keep his balance, it's harder for him to keep his balance. Okay, so this is probably the one trick that I could share that helped me out a lot with my scissor sweeps. Just took me a long time, that combined with my setup. So consider when you get your setup, you are trying to get your hips off center, all right? Now the more off center I am, the more I'm able to off balance, okay? So again, when you set up, watch my hips. I'm not gonna set up on this plane. I'm gonna try to move out here. So as I go here, I set up, my hips are scooted out. It's much easier for me to get that scissor sweep, okay? So, I hope you all enjoyed this little tutorial on the scissor sweep. I'm going to be putting out some more deep dives into other positions. Next up, we're going to do some side control, so be on the lookout for that. If you like this content, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, whatever. Check out the links in the description, help support the channel. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you.